Caliborn has taken over the narrative, using the comic to tell his own twisted parody of Homestuck. Luckily for us, there's a Plan B, the Act 6 Super Cartridge Expansion Pack. However, Caliborn has an answer to this Plan B. Before the cartridge is inserted, he stuffs it full of special stardust, bugging out our view of the comic, just like what happened when Disc 2 was scratched. But this time, something's different, as the characters within the story acknowledge the strange glitches. The Condesce-controlled Jane creates GCat and sends him through the portal to Earth. Riding a separate meteor to Earth, Jade shrinks the planet down and brings it to the Inciposphere. She also enlarges the 4 planets and Skya, placing them in the Alpha Kids Inciposphere. Dave and the Mayor have been teleported to Dave's planet. Karkat and Kanaya have been teleported to Jade's planet. Rose and Terezi have been transported to Rose's planet. None of them can remember anything after being teleported to Lomax at the end of Act 6, Act 5, and the glitches caused by the special stardust frequently obscure communication between each other, as well as obfuscating scenes and text to the audience. Jade visits Roxy in her cell and tells her to reconsider carrying out the Condesce's secret plan. Roxy attempts to change the subject, but Jade refuses to back down and shoves the folder in her face. As it turns out, the Condesce plans to rebuild Troll Society from the ground up, and needs Roxy to use her powers as the Rogue of Void to steal nothingness from the Matriorb, effectively forcing it to exist. After Jade threatens Roxy, Roxy attempts to create the Matriorb, but is only able to create a perfectly generic object due to her lack of skill with her powers. Jade leaves Roxy to her practice so she can look for John, who has been obfuscating his presence from her with his breath powers. Dave spends his time in his apartment reminiscing about his past when John teleports to him, but John is barely able to say anything before teleporting away. Jade arrives and teleports Dave to his alchemitor, where they alchemize a weapon capable of harming Lord English, Dave's sword Galedfulge, from before it was broken. Jade tells Dave he needs to be more battle-ready, since, as the only remaining time player, he's the one who is meant to deal the final blow to Lord English. However, Dave refuses her offer to spar with him, adding that he's done with time travel for good, since time traveling would give him knowledge of horrible events beforehand, and he would have to live with them. In addition, with no personal quarrel with Lord English, he has no drive to fight him. Jade, infuriated at Dave's stupid problems, decides to hurt someone he cares about to make him cooperate, pushing the mayor into the lava below. However, Dave is able to catch the mayor just in time and flies away with him. Karkat and Kanaya meet Jade and Jane. While there, Jade explains the Condesce's plan to use the Earth she ganked as the new homeworld for the trolls. She then tells the 2 trolls to speak with Echidna, Jade's Denison, about retrieving the Genesis frog that fell into the forge at the end of Act 5, since Echidna refused to speak with Jade. But, as another space player, Kanaya would still be able to talk with her, and Karkat was specifically requested to be present as well. When the 2 refuse to help her, Jane murders Karkat just as John arrives on scene. Jane resurrects Karkat, though this is the only time she can do so for Karkat. If Karkat dies again, it will be permanent. Jade tackles the now-present John, but John teleports away again. Kanaya angrily confronts Jane about her killing of Karkat, but Jane distracts her with Gamzee's bottles of blood. Despite their ridiculous markup, Kanaya buys every single one of them due to her thirst for blood as a rainbow drinker. A hungover Rose and sight-restored Terezi despise how bright everything seems to be on Lolar. The 2 are briefly overcome by glitches, but John arrives and blows the glitches away with his breath powers. When John mentions things on Lomax that neither of the 2 seers can remember, John is forced to explain that since he touched the strange house juju, he randomly teleports to various times and spaces, and seems to be unstuck from reality, able to alter past events. He briefly recounts the events on Lomax, mentioning that the trolls and humans who were there were about to go find the missing Alpha Kids when Jade arrived and separated them all. Rose then prompts John to search for said Alpha Kids, but is unable to think of a message to send Roxy before John randomly teleports away again. Terezi alchemizes a red blindfold and leaves to hunt down Gamzee. Meanwhile, Rose wonders if their personal quest to restore their planets even matter anymore, since those quests were likely designed for their 13-year-old selves. Dirk, PM, and the 3 Jack Noirs are heading towards the Inciposphere. Dirk sends a message to Arquia Sprite to ask what he missed, and learns that Jane has been taken over by the Tiara Top. It will take Dirk 3 hours to enter the Inciposphere from his current location. Arquia Sprite also mentions that he has bonded with Dave Sprite, and recommends Dirk have a similar conversation with the real Dave when he gets the chance. Their conversation ends when Dirk is overrun by glitches. In an alternate timeline, John arrives in the middle of Dave's time rant, and completely ruins it before teleporting away. A future iteration of John also arrives, preventing himself from interrupting the scene in the first place and allowing it to continue as normal. The 2 Johns teleport to a blank space outside the comic. Future John tells past John to go find Roxy and gives him a bonk on the head, teleporting him to a formerly glitched out scene with Jane and Jake. Despite the captive Jake's questions, Jane refuses to discuss anything, threatening Jake if he doesn't shut up. Jake wishes things would go back to the way things were before Suburb when Brain Ghost Dirk appears. Jake asks for help, but Dirk informs him that he can't do that until Jake masters his Ho powers and makes Brain Ghost Dirk real. Jane is confused by Jake talking to himself. John arrives in Roxy's cell, where she's constructed a fort of perfectly generic objects. The only progress she's made is being able to manifest pumpkins. The two bring each other up to speed on their respective sessions and discuss their friends. When Roxy brings up her fears that Lord English might kill Calliope's ghost, John offers to let Roxy use the Ring of Life to bring her back to life, so that can't happen. After farewells, John turns into wind and flies out the window. After their conversation, Roxy makes more progress, summoning an object that is part perfectly generic object and part matriorg. When John arrives on Lomax, he's distressed to find that the Ring of Life has gone missing. Taking over the narrative once more, Caliborn starts up the second act of his parody of Homestuck. John teleports into the middle of this parody, and is both horrified and disgusted by Caliborn's crude retelling. John frequently interferes with the story before being flooded with tons of shitty Daves. John swears revenge on Caliborn and teleports away. Aranea has a plan that both Vriska and Mina think is insane. Hijacking Gamzee's mind and using him to bring her the Ring of Life, she's been brought back to life in the Alpha Kid session. She plans to sabotage the session and prevent the creation of the next universe, which will become the Cherub's home universe. Although this sort of action would normally end in a doomed timeline, she hopes her Sylph of Light powers will allow her to heal the timeline and force it to be the Alpha timeline, making Lord English part of a doomed timeline and thus doomed to die. Aranea uses several Damara ghosts to move the battleship from Lomax to Durs. Jane notices and follows behind in pursuit. Jane orders Jade to come to Durs immediately to help deal with the problem. Jade and Jane discuss how to handle the situation, but ultimately decide not to get the Condess involved. Aranea retrieves Jake from his cell and awakens him as the Page of Hope. A bright light and several angels, similar to the ones on Eridan's planet, explode out of his cell. Roxy escapes her own cell by phasing through the wall. After seeing the situation, she elects to stay intangible. Jane's father watches in stern fatherly confusion as Jade and Jane attempt to handle the Jake situation, with Jade going after Jake and Jane attempting to goad Aranea into a fight. Jade is unable to do anything to Jake through his hope field, however, and decides the best way to defend Durs is to switch the locations of Lofaf and Durs. Mina contacts Karkat and informs him that there's a whale of a problem. Jake, Jade, Jane, Aranea, and Roxy appear above Lofaf, and upon seeing this, Karkat informs Dave that they may have a problem. Dave in turn tells Rose that there's problems, and they all head for Lofaf. Jane tries to unleash the power of the Green Sun at Jake to get him to stop. However, his hope field easily repels her powers despite how impossible that should be, and she just ends up creating a crater full of lava next to the forge. The force of the blast knocks Jade out, and she finally stops being Grimbark. To prevent the Condess from taking over Jade's mind again, Aranea crushes her with her own house, and forces her death to be judged as just. In the furthest ring, Calliope wonders if death would be preferable to her afterlife of isolation. When a new visitor arrives, she initially hides, though comes out when it turns out to just be Jade. Jade is unable to remember how she got here, only remembering vaguely that she did some bad things to others. Calliope and Jade have fun coming up with Trollsona for Jade. Jade can't shake the feeling that she and Calliope have spoken before, but ignores it for now. Jane flies over to Jade to try to revive her, but is attacked by Gamzee. Dave arrives and is terrified by Jade's body, but Gamzee refuses to answer his questions as he is too busy grappling Jane. Terezi arrives and dropkicks Gamzee, freeing Jane. Terezi, too, will not answer Dave's questions, since she is too busy trying to kill Gamzee, who she realizes is in cahoots with Aranea. Jane attempts to revive Jade again, but turns around to see that Dave is fighting the newly arrived PM and Bec Noir, who now have possession of Jade's corpse. The two refuse to give Jade's body over to be revived, as their doggy instincts make them think they're protecting her. When Jane makes another revival attempt, the healing beam is mistaken for an attack by PM and Bec Noir. In an attempt at self-defense, Jane summons G-Cat, who the two doggy Carapacians chase across the planet without dropping Jade. When Dave realizes Jane can save Jade, he flies after them in pursuit. Meanwhile, the invisible Roxy, who Aranea can apparently see, confronts Aranea and tries to get her to give her Ring of Life to give to Calliope. It doesn't work, and Aranea puts Roxy to sleep to prevent her from interfering with her plans. Brain Ghost Dirk appears behind Aranea and, thanks to Jake's hope powers, is now real and fully intent on killing Aranea as revenge for putting Jake into his unresponsive, superpowered hope state. Dirk attempts to use his Prince of Heart powers to rip Aranea's soul out of her body, but Jake's hope field begins to fail, and Dirk becomes less and less real. Rose arrives on Lofaf and asks Dave what's going on when she notices Roxy asleep on Jade's house next to Dirk and Aranea. Dirk tells Rose to grab Roxy and get her out of the way, and Rose complies, depositing Roxy on a toppled section of Jade's house. Dave flies past Karkat and Kanaya as they rush through the burning forest towards the mayhem. When she notices the hope field has failed, Jane chucks her trident at Jake, forking him in the chest. Brain Ghost Dirk vanishes, Aranea regains her soul, and Jake falls next to Terezi and dies. Gamzee, temporarily free from Aranea's mind control, begs Terezi to stop attacking him. Terezi stops out of guilt. Aranea recontrols Gamzee, who lets out an enraged honk and punches Terezi in the face, and puts Jane to sleep. However, with the tiara top still in control of Jane, Jane's sleeping body grapples Aranea. Jane's Skya trident falls into the lava, destroying Skya. Aranea levitates Brain Ghost Dirk's katana, which is still real, intent on killing Jane with it. Jake is resurrected, as his death was neither just nor heroic. Gamzee knocks Terezi towards the pool of lava below, but catches her at the last second. Rose fires a spell at Gamzee, but it hits Jake instead, sending him flying. Terezi reaches for her cane in vain. Karkat and Kanaya arrive and get ready to attack Gamzee. The Condess, enraged, arrives in her battleship. As Caliborn retakes control of the narrative, he shows off his awful manga-inspired art. John zaps into the room and recognizes Caliborn not only as the guy who drowned him in Shitty Daves previously, but also as Lord English himself. The two prepare for a showdown as Caliborn tells John that it's game over, kid. Game over. Flicking the ring of life off Aranea's finger, the Condesce snaps Aranea's neck, giving her a just death. John appears in the wrecked and glitchy Inciposphere, completely baffled by what just happened. After being defeated by John, Caliborn goes on a self-pitying rant and decides to leave for a while, raising money to create his masterpiece, and the next part of Homestuck. Hey everyone, if you enjoyed this summary, be sure to leave a like. If you want to be informed of the remaining summaries when they're uploaded, hit that subscribe button. I also have a few other videos in the works, so be on the lookout for those as well. If you want to support me, you can donate to my Patreon or my GoFundMe. And with that out of the way, I'll see you in the next video.